the anonymous letter detailing some allegations of domestic violence?
No. I'm pretty confident about that.
Do you think that that was made up, or?
Yeah. I have good reason to believe it was made up.
So why did she withdraw from consideration?
I think this has been a very long process, and she had spent a lot of time talking to people, and while she didn't have 5 votes against her, she didn't have 5 votes for her, and I think she thought, just at this point it wasn't worth going through more uncertainty. She spent a lot of time kind of hanging out on this, and I think it's going on over 2 months now. And she probably figured that, she needed to have a break and go on.
Can I get your general comment on, how it may look to people who perhaps don't live in Montgomery County and aren't focused on this? They see first the Takoma Park Police Chief withdraw. They see this candidate withdraw. I assume you're paying enough for the job. I mean, what's going on?
Well, the Takoma Park Police Chief withdrew because he wasn't the first choice, and he acknowledged what was going to be, and simply said, well, I'm not a candidate because the county's, we've decided to go in a different direction. Like I said, I think, if I was sitting in her shoes, I might have looked at this the same way and said, this is long, drawn out, and there's no certainty that if I answer the questions again, every question that was on that list of questions pretty much had been asked and answered in private conversations. So she may have felt that I've done this and I just need to move on.
Might people wonder, is there some toxicity to the department? Also, Acting Chief Jones says he's having trouble recruiting officers. You have these
everybody in the country's having trouble recruiting officers. They write news stories about this because the police are under a lot of fire, and being a policeman now is probably more thankless than it's ever been in a lot of ways. It's like living under a microscope. Everybody has a camera. Everything you do is under scrutiny, and you can go out, work a job, and make better money than a police officer does, and undergo a lot less attention. And so I think we've got a problem in this country if people are afraid or unwilling to become police officers.
I guess I was asking if you perceive a problem in Montgomery County with the department and the difficulty in finding a chief or filling that job expeditiously.
Oh, we didn't have a lack of applicants. I don't find a difficulty in finding people who wanted to do it. And I think the department is I don't think the department's a toxic department. By and large, we do pretty well. For all the outrage and things over the incidents that have occurred, those incidents don't typify what happens every day in this county. They're kind of exceptional, and I could look at a lot of other places around where that is more the norm. So I think, we basically are pretty solid, and we have a pretty good department. I don't think that was the problem. I really do think that, when the way things got released and the leaking of information, in Tanya's case, kind of focused the thing around one moment in her life as opposed to her entire career. Anybody else I've nominated for positions, people look at their careers, they don't look at a moment in life. And I just think it's unfortunate.
Mr. Elrich, our friends at Bethesda Magazine are reporting that you are going to nominate Darryl McSwain from Maryland National Capital Police, Park Police?
So we haven't sent any name over. We have not done any background checks. We are not ready to confirm anything until we do all of our due diligence. And when we do all our due diligence, then we'll happily come forward and say what we're going to do. And I regret the fact that council members who were asked to let this go through the process which they wanted, which was at least a week of no discussion, that somebody decided that they weren't even going to allow that to happen. Now, I don't think that's not the council president's view of things, but obviously some people feel otherwise. I'm disappointed.
So is that a confirmation?
Is it a confirmation? No.
Well, Marc, was there some concern from Ms. Chapman and perhaps yourself that if this had gone forward, that she would not have been able to get the 5 yea votes necessary?
Look, I thought if she had gone forward and gone through all this, she would have gotten the votes. I mean, what would have come out, you would have had a discussion of what people were concerned about in Portsmouth, but you also would have had a discussion of the rest of her career, and I think the rest of her career stands up really well, including issues of the breadth of, you know, people she had supervised. I mean, she was deputy in the Virginia State Police Department. She's done a remarkable job in a number of different venues. And, but I think, you know, this process has taken a long time. And the fact that, you know, having answered questions and feeling like you're gonna go, you know, this is again, more questions, that if one's satisfied now, you probably weren't gonna be satisfied, or at least some people.
Do you think she just more or less hit her limit?
I think she got tired, and personally she was, you know, she says this is for personal reasons. I would find it exhausting.
Do you think the next candidate is gonna have a similar time, similar trouble with that process?
Well, again, I wish, you know, there had been a period where we could have sent the no member and people had a quiet week or two to contemplate. But I don't think there's gonna be, you know, a problem. I know of no incident. You know, I knew what happened in Portsmouth. That did not deter me. I know for, you know, a candidate we might send over now, there's nothing that's gonna cause that kind of pause.
Mark,
Yeah.
even if you're not willing to confirm that Daryl is your choice, can you at least say that there is one person you have in mind to send to the council?
No.
Sir, since that man's name has surfaced to
Yeah.
Chief McSwain, could you at least confirm that he's a candidate for the job, and would you say he's a strong candidate?
I can say that he's expressed interest.
I guess on that same, if there's multiple people being looked at still, Chief Jones has obviously been in the headlines. He was one of the final 4, as I understand it. Does he still have a shot at this?
I mean, to be honest, no. I mean, I really have tried to listen to what the community said and what the council said. You remember, this is a council that has gone forward on both the let process and the desire to have an advisory board that actually would help determine police policy, which is kind of a statement that, you know, we want a little bit more control, and we're not totally comfortable with the direction. I mean, obviously, if people are totally comfortable with direction, wouldn't be saying, I'd like to have policy powers here. So I think, you know, that's reality. And I think that Marcus, you know, who I think has been really good. He's served really, really well. But if I wanted to change it, agent personally, and I think the council has been looking for changes, and I felt that, you know, there are some other candidates who are more likely to address some of the issues that we think need to be changed. And it's not a personal criticism, but, you know, I think we were all kind of taken aback at some of the incidents that happened. And there are things that struck me that said I would like, that there's some things I'd like to see different.
Mark, are you personally frustrated with as important a position as this is, that it is not resolved yet?
I'm frustrated, but on the other hand, I mean, the good thing about this police department is we have pretty amazing people who are able to step forward and lead, and I don't think the department suffered a lack of leadership under any of the people who served as an interim since Tom. I mean, this is pretty skilled. They're very professional. There's a lot, you know, going for this department, which is why I'm pretty confident about how we're going to go forward in this. I think we'll be able to accommodate change and growth, and at the same time build on all the things that, you know, that I think Tom was able to build in that department. So I feel pretty good. I felt we were left in pretty good shape to deal with this.
When are you expecting to name the finalists?
I don't have a date in mind. I mean, I've had my druthers. I would wait to make sure that everything that we were investigating was cleared, to be honest with you. Nobody wants to do a background check and then say, I'm naming my person, and then 3 weeks later say, well, something popped up in the background. I don't expect it. But I prefer to have gotten clear of all that before I did it.
Maybe within the next few weeks, is that?
That's a reasonable scenario.
Mark, have you talked at all with Daryl? Just, I mean, he said that he's expressed interest. Have you
Run into
talked-
him all the time.
But have you talked with
I
him
talked to Daryl, yeah,
about this?
many things.
Was Chapman seeking employment anywhere else than Montgomery County?
I think she was in the running in another jurisdiction.
Any chance that that jurisdiction's already decided on her?
No, I don't believe so.
Mark, do you think that this outcome with Tanya Chapman would have been different if it hadn't leaked out first?
Yeah, I think if she had gone through a normal process where people would have met an applicant, we would have sent over a packet, and they would have had a chance to review her, and as opposed to where the stories about her got ahead of our ability and to do, well, first of all, our due diligence and complete the things we were doing, it created a climate around it that I think was really hard to deal with. I mean, it's unusual. I mean, you think about most people who've been sent over, whether by me or by Ike or Doug, most of the time, things go over very quietly. You all don't hear rumors. Nobody's out there leaking who the person is. And so there's all the due diligence and everything happens in a normal way. This was not normal.
What do you think was different about this particular appointment that caused it to be so abnormal?
Like I say, you know, we had a very open and community-involved process. And maybe it's the problem of involving 50 people in a search, and not everybody has the same commitment to confidentiality, and then things just spiral, because once somebody says something, you're going to say, you guys are the press, you're going to somebody else and say, can you confirm what somebody else said? And then that person's automatically liberated to say, well, I heard the same thing, since now you've already heard it. So I think that it was just an unusual process, and I think that it's just really unfortunate. I would like to have had a person weighed on the fullness of what they had done, and I just don't think she ever had a chance to have that happen.
Is there anything you'd like to add about the statement that you all put out about Montgomery County's lack of cooperation with the federal government involving undocumented immigrants?
There's a bunch of stuff I'd say. It's not, it's not that it's an absolute nothing, because, and people refer to us as a sanctuary city. A lot of my friends wish we were a sanctuary city. We have not taken that step because there are circumstances, as we made it clear again in that press release, where we do call ICE. And we have basically the same policy that Ike had before me. I didn't change anything. I made an executive order out of what had been a policy. We were clearer about defining what other departments can do, but it was like everybody was operating under those similar guidelines anyway. We did a scrub of what we were doing just to evaluate where we were. We really didn't have to change anything. But there was a desire for something stronger than, just we made a policy to do this. But we continue to look carefully at who's getting released. And I share the concern that other people have about folks going back in the community. But as we tried to say in the release, the reason I cited the Fourth Amendment is because the Fourth Amendment is a real thing. If anybody believes this is a nation of laws, this is one of those laws, and that says you cannot take anybody without a warrant. And a warrant is issued by a judge. And these detainers aren't coming from judges. And you should ask yourself, if ICE was so sure of the legal sufficiency of that, why don't they go to a judge in Montgomery County who's hearing a case? Or why don't they go to the courts and say, after this case is done, regardless of how you dispose of it, we'd like you to detain the person, because a judge would be able to order a detainer. But this fails a bunch of tests, and I'm not going to go over the amendment itself, but it is really, it really limits what we can do, and I'm not alone in this. This is actually Brian Frosch's opinion, and he's made that statement on behalf of the state. He didn't make it on behalf of Montgomery County. The other jurisdictions, there's a whole bunch around here, if you've noticed, that have done the same thing we did. Prince George's County, Howard, Baltimore City, we're all basically following the same set of rules because, the Attorney General has kind of laid out what the limitations are of what we could do. But if people think we're just releasing people, that's the thing that offends me most of all. It's like the county has released people, or I haven't released anybody. Somebody in the court system said, you served your time, we dropped the charges, or you met bail, and therefore you're free to go. And I don't have the power to say, no, you're not free to go. That's not my decision. And if, people are concerned about how the system works, you can talk about bond guidelines, concerns about whether the bonds are adequate or what. There's all kinds of legitimate discussion to have about how some of these processes work, but this is not the role of the county government per se to be involved in doing this. But we're still gonna, do our best to make sure people we think are concerned to the community, that ICE knows when they're leaving and they can come. And I gotta say, I resent this notion they need 48 hours notice. There's only one jail in Montgomery County. We're an hour's drive from Baltimore, assuming that everybody's just sitting around in an office in Baltimore. The idea that they can't get here is ludicrous. And, if this is of concern to you and we tell you somebody's being released, be there. But don't make some excuse that, well, I didn't have 48 hours. If this is really important, you're protecting public safety and you're worried about whether we're doing an adequate job, get yourself out of your office and send people here to do what you're supposed to do, if you think that's what you're supposed to do.
Mark, the new policy stated that ICE wasn't allowed in any secure portions of the jail. Has that changed any, and particularly, has it changed when ICE is notified about an individual brought in on a serious charge and gets to the jail in time? Are they allowed to get that person in the secure portion? Or
They're supposed to wait till they go through that last door, but I will be honest with you, we are gonna look at that because there are questions that, people have raised about not just the safety of ICE officials, but the safety of anybody else who might be out there. And so, I've asked a question about whether the ICE officials are armed. And there are things that, we're willing to look at if we think it's, danger. But it would also have been nice if somebody from ICE would have said, look, we understand what you're doing, but, if you're gonna do it, could we at least, look at this issue, because this issue may make it unnecessarily difficult. I'm not a hard person to talk to. And if I had had a conversation with people, I would have sat around with some of our folks and said, does this make sense or doesn't it make sense? So we'll be thinking about that.
One other question I had, some of these individuals that are charged with serious crimes are held without bond, so it's sort of a non-issue about immediate release. In other cases, you do have judges that post very low or unsecured personal bonds where you don't even have to post anything. And is the county going to hold those individuals if ICE gets a detainer in for a period of time that, let's just say you post at 2 in the morning and ICE probably doesn't have that many people around the state available at that time. So in those situations, is there a...
So Frosch's thing is pretty clear that you gotta wait, but we don't accelerate anybody's release. So if they're releasing, 20 people, then, and you happen to be undocumented, we do not put you at the first in line so you can get out first in line. You wind up in line wherever you are in line. And some people, I think one person took 6 hours before they're released. So we're not doing anything special. We're not changing, we're not making the release easier, but we're also not making it difficult. The Frosch's, ruling on this doesn't give us the gray area to say, well, at 2 o'clock in the morning you can do something. But also we're not processing anybody. I don't know if we're processing anybody at 2 o'clock in the morning. I won't say I don't say we're not, but maybe we tell them to wait until the morning. But either way, I'm constrained by what the Attorney General has said is Maryland policy.
Before you leave, could I
Yeah.
get you to put a bow on this chief thing by, could you give us the...
What color bow would you like?
Could you give us the one or two qualities or characteristics you're looking for in a new police chief?
Wow. It's more than one or two. I want an openness to change and a sensitivity to the environment and the community and an understanding of people's concerns about policing and the ability to deal with that without becoming defensive. I mean, the world's changed, and we need people who can look at that and say, well, given this, you know, these are the rules, and we're gonna figure out how we play by the rules. I mean, one of the things that bothered me most in the videos I saw was less the person who did something I thought was wrong, but the fact that, you know, sometimes as many as 6 people stood around and watched it. And I thought if there was any training that should have been valuable in a day and age when you know you're on camera, you're on your own body camera, leaving that aside, you're on the camera of everybody else standing around you. And to have enough sensitivity that this no longer works, no longer happens in the dark, it no longer happens behind a corner, it happens out in public view. And that everybody, whether it's the officer who's directly involved or the people who are there with them, should have looked at any of these incidents and said, you know, let's get control of this and do this the right way. And that didn't happen. That probably bothered me more than anything else. Individuals are individuals, but the kind of collective acceptance of it. I thought this is a case of training, and it ought to be training just for self-preservation. So I want a chief who can help the department get through this, who understands policing so that officers have confidence that this is a police person who's done the job before and understands what we're going through, but also can say, hey guys, you know, we need to change, and I'm gonna help us make this adaptation. That's what I want out of somebody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.